Subnautica 2 is a game that has been sitting at the absolute top of Steam's most wishlisted chart for 9 consecutive months straight. 9. And it just launched today in early access, which, to be clear, it's not even fully out yet. Over 5 million wishlists before a single person could officially buy it. To put that number in perspective, that's a level of anticipation that almost nothing ever achieves. Black Myth was considered one of the most hyped games in years heading into its launch, and Subnautica 2 is operating at that exact same level of pre-release heat. That is insane for a survival game from a mid-sized studio. And honestly, the story of how we even got here, how this game went from something that should have been out a year ago to a courtroom drama involving fired founders, a $250 million bonus, and a CEO who consulted ChatGPT to try and screw his own developers, is one of the most genuinely unhinged things I have ever seen in gaming. And we are going to get into all of it. But first, let's go back to the beginning. Because to understand what Subnautica 2 is and why people are this excited, you kind of have to understand what the original Subnautica was. And if you already know, bear with me for a second because I want to make sure everybody's on the same page here. The original Subnautica came out in full back in 2018, developed by a studio called Unknown Worlds Entertainment. These are the same people who made Natural Selection back in 2003, which was a Half-Life mod that became its own thing. But Subnautica was a completely different direction for them. The concept sounds simple on paper. You crash land on an alien ocean planet called 4546b. Your escape pod is wrecked. You have no weapons. And I want to emphasize that because it's one of the things that makes Subnautica actually unique. You have no guns, no combat system, no way to really fight back. All you have is the drive to survive. So you start gathering resources, building a base, crafting better equipment and vehicles, and slowly descending deeper and deeper into an ocean that gets more and more terrifying the further down you go. That's the loop. And it sounds so straightforward, but the execution was just absolutely masterful. What Subnautica did better than almost any game I can think of is it made you feel genuinely small. You're a fragile human being on an alien world, and the ocean does not care about you at all. The deeper you go, the darker it gets, the stranger the creatures become, and the further you are from safety. There's this specific kind of dread that the game builds, this mix of pure wonder and absolute terror that I don't think any other survival game has really replicated. It became one of the most beloved games in the genre almost overnight. People were obsessed with it. Then in 2021, they dropped Below Zero, which was a follow-up set on a different part of the same planet that added some surface and land exploration into the mix. Also great, though a good chunk of fans felt it wasn't quite as tight as the first one, but still a solid game with a very dedicated fan base. So when an actual full sequel was confirmed, people were obviously paying close attention. Unknown Worlds officially confirmed Subnautica 2 was in production back on April 7th, 2022, described at the time simply as the next game in the Subnautica universe. Not a ton of detail. Then in November of 2023, publisher Krafton, we'll get into who they are in a second, officially revealed it as Subnautica 2. A cinematic trailer dropped in October of 2024 during the Xbox Partner Showcase. People went absolutely crazy for it. It shot straight to the top of Steam's wishlist chart and essentially never left. An early access release was slated for sometime in 2025, which felt totally reasonable. And then everything went sideways. Now Krafton, for those who don't know, Krafton is a South Korean gaming company probably best known for publishing PUBG. They acquired Unknown Worlds back in 2021, which at the time seemed fine. The Subnautica team retained creative control. They had the backing and resources of a larger company. Everything seemed like it was going according to plan, and for a while, it was. Dev blogs started dropping in April of 2025, showing new content and early gameplay footage. PC Gamer was reportedly coordinating a full cover story on the game as recently as June of 2025. It was cover ready. People inside the industry were playing it. Everything pointed toward a 2025 launch happening. And then, 1 month later, the studio just quietly pulled out of that cover story, with no explanation given. None. And within weeks, the full picture started to emerge, and it was not pretty. In July of 2025, Krafton announced they had removed Unknown Worlds CEO Ted Gill, along with studio co-founders Charlie Cleveland and Max McGuire, 3 of the core people who had built Subnautica and were leading the development of the sequel. Gone. All 3 of them. Krafton replaced them with a guy named Steve Papoutsas, who had previously worked as executive producer at Striking Distance Studios, which is the team behind the Callisto Protocol, and the early access launch was officially delayed to 2026. The stated reason from Krafton's side was that the founders had abandoned their responsibilities at the studio, that the game was nowhere near ready, and that a premature launch would, and I'm quoting here, irreversibly harm the franchise. The community response was immediate and overwhelmingly negative. Nobody was buying it, and then the lawsuit started. And that's when the real story came out. So here's what actually happened. When Krafton acquired Unknown Worlds back in 2021, part of the deal included a bonus structure, an earnout worth up to $250 million, tied to the commercial performance of Subnautica 2. The idea was that if the game hit certain revenue targets, the founders, and by extension, a lot of the studio's staff would receive a massive payout. And with Subnautica 2 sitting at the top of Steam's wishlist for months, looking like a guaranteed hit, that $250 million was looking very, very real. So Krafton CEO Chang and Kim apparently started getting cold feet. Now, here is the part that I genuinely cannot believe is a real thing that happened. Rather than consulting his legal team or any kind of business advisor about how to handle the earnout situation, Kim turned to ChatGPT. He sent a message to Krafton's head of corporate development where he relayed that the chatbot had basically told him it would be difficult to cancel the earnout. And then, according to the lawsuit, after being warned by his actual lawyers that the payout had to be made even if the founders were dismissed with cause, Kim apparently decided to use an AI chatbot to help figure out a way around it anyway. A Delaware judge named Lori Will later wrote in her ruling that Krafton's CEO had used an artificial intelligence chatbot to, in her words, contrive a corporate takeover strategy. That is the most damning thing a judge has ever written about a game publisher. That line will live in gaming history forever. So Cleveland, McGuire, and Gill filed suit. The case worked its way through the courts over the following months. And in March of 2026, the judge ruled that Krafton had fired the 3 founders without valid cause and had improperly seized operational control of Unknown Worlds. Ted Gill was ordered reinstated as CEO. The $250 million earnout period was restored and extended, and things continued to be messy. Krafton announced a May early access release date before Gill had even officially resumed control of the studio. He publicly said it was news to him. The date stuck anyway. At some point before launch, Krafton's name was also quietly removed from the Subnautica 2 Steam page, though Unknown Worlds later confirmed they're still co-publishing together. It was described by the studio as just one of those Steam things that happened, though nobody really bought that either. The relationship has clearly been strained, to say the least. But here's the thing. Through all of that, through the firings and the lawsuits and the ChatGPT CEO and the court orders and the messy publisher drama, the game is here. It launched today, May 14th, 2026, and the developers who actually built it are still there. The design lead said during development that the community's support kept the team going when things were at their hardest, and the community very much showed up. 5 million wishlists, 9 months at the top of the charts. That is not normal. That is a fan base that genuinely cares about what this team is making, and they made it known. And the team has been equally clear about something that I think is worth saying out loud, especially in the era we're in right now. No season pass, no battle pass, no loot boxes, no subscriptions, no microtransactions. Full stop. They've said it multiple times, reiterated it after every wave of publisher drama, and doubled down on it even after Krafton declared itself an AI-first company in October of 2025. Unknown Worlds separately confirmed they are not using generative AI in Subnautica 2 at all. You buy the game once for $29.99 right now in early access, and you get every single update between here and the full 1 release. That's the deal. Alright, so after all of that, what actually is the game? Set on a completely brand new alien ocean planet called Zazura, not planet 4546b, not anywhere from below zero, completely fresh. Subnautica 2 puts you in the role of a pioneer who's been sent by the Altera Corporation on the colony ship Cicada. Something has clearly gone wrong with the mission. You're stranded on a world that the ship's AI, named Noah, is basically telling you should not be survivable for a human being. His exact vibe is something like, "This planet is too dangerous for humans to survive in, unless you change what it means to be human." Lovely. Great start. And that line actually sets up the biggest new mechanic in the entire game, DNA modification. This is genuinely one of the most interesting things I've heard about a survival game in a long time. The idea is that you use a tool called the biosampler to collect genetic material from the creatures and flora around you. You bring those samples back to your base, process them through a centrifuge and a modification station in your biolab, and then you inject yourself with serums that literally alter your own biology. We're talking enhanced swim speed, pressure resistance, bioluminescence, night vision. You are physically changing your body to match the planet's environment. And the clever part is that whatever modifications you're currently running also affect how the game's creature AI behaves toward you. Stack too many aggressive modifications, and you start attracting predators instead of keeping them at bay. There's a real risk and reward element to every single injection you make. And in co-op, which we're about to get into, it opens up these really interesting team strategies. One person goes heavy on resistance mods and essentially becomes the tank, while others run lighter, builds focused on speed and exploration. This whole system was actually originally designed for the first first Subnautica back in development. It was called the Transfuser back then, and it got cut because the team was already at the limit of what they could ship. It's finally here the way it was always meant to be, and it sounds like it's going to fundamentally change the feel of the game. Now, co-op. This has been the #1 fan request since the original launched back in 2014. For over a decade, people have been begging Unknown Worlds to add multiplayer to Subnautica. There were mods for it. It was the one thing the community kept coming back to. And Subnautica 2 finally delivers it as a proper core feature from day one. Up to 4 players, a host and 3 friends, can explore together with full cross-platform support. And Unknown Worlds was very specific about making sure solo players don't get left behind here. None of the game's content requires co-op to progress. No locked areas, no puzzles that need multiple people, no progression gates behind multiplayer. You can play the entire thing alone and experience the full game. But if you want to go in with friends, the whole experience is built around it from the ground up. There's even a shared dive elevator that teams use to descend into the depths together, which honestly sounds incredible. One thing worth mentioning, you can start a save in solo and convert it to co-op later. You don't have to commit to a mode at the beginning, which is a genuinely nice quality of life decision and exactly the kind of thing that shows you the people designing this game actually thought about how real players approach these situations. Let's talk about what the world itself looks like. Zazura is an entirely handcrafted planet, not procedurally generated. At launch, confirmed biomes include a safe shallows equivalent for early game exploration, jelly plateaus, overgrown ruins, sparse plains, and more. The game also introduces dynamic ocean currents as a major new environmental feature, actual currents that can physically drag you from one area of the map into another, which both serves as a traversal mechanic and as a genuine threat. One second you're exploring, the next the ocean has decided it's taking you somewhere else. The new creatures include 5 confirmed Leviathans at launch, which is already more than the original had at its full one release. The standout one people have been talking about is the Collector Leviathan, which runs on Unreal Engine 5's AI systems and reacts in real time to light, sound, and player actions. Fully simulated tentacle physics, shockwave attacks, the whole thing. It sounds like exactly the kind of creature that will absolutely traumatize a certain subset of players, and I mean that in the best possible way. Speaking of Unreal Engine 5, this is also a pretty significant technical jump from the Unity-based originals. Real-time underwater lighting, more complex creature behavior, improved environmental detail across the board. The new hardware requirements are noticeably higher than the previous games, but the visual jump looks like it's earned. The narrative itself is built around players who take on the role of a silent protagonist stepping back from Below Zero's voiced main character, which a lot of fans will be happy about trying to survive on Zazura, clear debts to Altera, and uncover what happened to the rest of the pioneers who were sent there. Senior narrative designer Seth Dickinson described the setting as a place of constant change, where the sea is alive and hungry, the rules of evolution are different, and alien DNA seeps into your bones. Which is a genuinely great line and makes me think the writing on this one is going to be something special. Now, this is early access, and I think it's important to be honest about what that means. Unknown Worlds has been very upfront. You can expect bugs, unfinished features, and missing content at launch. They're estimating the early access period runs somewhere around 2 to 3 years, which puts a full one release somewhere around 2028 at the earliest. They've laid out a plan where major updates add new biomes, creatures, craftables, and story chapters throughout the process, alongside regular hotfixes and balance patches. Unknown Worlds has a genuinely strong track record with this model. The original Subnautica spent about 2 years in early access, before its full release, and came out the other side as one of the most polished survival games ever made. They've done this before and they did it well, so at least there's real reason to trust the process here. At launch for $29.99, you're getting several explorable biomes, 5 Leviathans, the beginning of the narrative, a variety of creatures and craftables, the full DNA modification system, co-op, and the Tadpole submersible as the starting vehicle. Base building has also been completely redesigned from the ground up, with more modularity and flexibility than the originals, and there are expanded customization options and multiplayer-friendly construction systems. More vehicles, more content, and the rest of the story all come during early access as updates drop. The game is available right now on PC through Steam, Epic Games Store, and the Microsoft Store, as well as Xbox Series X and S. And it's on Xbox Game Pass day one, which means if you're a subscriber, you can just jump in without buying it outright. PlayStation owners are unfortunately left out for now. Sony doesn't support early access programs, so there's no PS5 version at launch and no confirmed date for one. Look, At the end of the day, the thing I keep coming back to with Subnautica 2 is just how much this game should not be here. The founders got fired, there were lawsuits, a CEO used ChatGPT, a judge had to get involved. The publisher had their name quietly removed from the Steam page. It was an absolute mess for the better part of a year, and yet somehow the team made it through. Somehow, the people who built this thing are still there, still shipping it, and still committed to doing it the right way. No predatory monetization, no AI-generated content, community feedback at the center of development. Founder Charlie Cleveland actually said after being fired that Subnautica 2 was already ready for early access, and he was baffled by Krafton's claims to the contrary. Looking at what's here today, I think he might have been right. The original Subnautica had that thing, that specific feeling of dropping into a world that is completely indifferent to your survival and just figuring it out piece by piece. And from everything I've seen and read about Subnautica 2, it seems like they very much protected that feeling while building something meaningfully bigger around it. The DNA system adds a layer the original never had, the co-op adds something people have wanted for over 10 years. The new planet means everyone, veterans and newcomers alike, starts from zero and figures it out together. I'm very excited to spend some time with this one, and if you've never played a Subnautica game before, honestly, this is probably the best time to jump in. Yeah, that's pretty much all I got. Hope this helped make sense of what Subnautica 2 actually is and how we ended up here. If you enjoyed it, leave a like, drop a comment, subscribe, all that stuff, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.